If you love the Adventure Sports Podcast, I'm confident that you're going to love Armchair Explorer. It's a new podcast by a recent guest, Aaron Miller, who is an award-winning London Times and National Geographic travel writer who basically sits down with some of the world's biggest explorers and adventurers and lets them tell their favorite story of all time. We're talking Olympic gold medalists who backcountry ski in Alaska, to award-winning travel writers who walk across Antarctica in the footsteps of Shackleton, gorilla trekking with leading conservationists, great white shark diving with some of the best in the industry, as well as interviewing astronauts about spacewalking above Earth. It's honestly a condensed version of our show, taking the best of the best stories and letting those explorers tell them. If you're interested to hear more, I highly encourage you to check out armchair-explorer.com or just looking up Armchair Explorer anywhere you find podcasts. And let it inspire you to get out there and do something fun and do something epic. ASP listeners, you can get 50% off your first order of CS Instant Coffee by using the code ADVENTURE. Check them out. They've been a supporter of the show for a while, so it would really mean a lot if you went and supported them. Thank you.
On the last tour, I had a really bad experience with someone who I think was just going through a really rough time in their life and unfortunately took it out on the group and then on me when I tried to ask him to leave the tour.
This is the Adventure Sports Podcast, where we hear stories of adventure from every corner of the planet. We interview all sorts of folks who are using their sport to explore the world around them and give you the inspiration you need to get out there and have some fun. Happy Monday, folks. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying healthy. I hope that you aren't going crazy if you're stuck at your house. I kind of am, so I decided to go out in the woods, do a little social distancing this weekend, and just reflect on what is important and how we can continue getting through this together. I know a lot of y'all are going to be looking at career changes after this experience. It's just going to be transformational for a lot of people. It's definitely going to be a before coronavirus and after coronavirus life for a lot of people. This is going to be very pivotal. And so, we've had a lot of episodes lately, or just at least a handful of episodes around folks pursuing their passion for a career. That's something I pursued for a long time, and failure after failure after failure finally led to, success, small successes, then bigger. And then now I feel like I've got a real job that kind of came out of that passion for bike touring and for adventure and for telling stories. And obviously, this podcast is a big part of that. But we heard from, Chris Whitaker as well as Aaron Owens Mayhew about just pursuing their love for backpacking and travel and adventure into a career. And it doesn't always work out for folks. And I wanted to share that side of it today with Caitlin Giddings, who wrote an incredible article in Outside Online. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But just so you know, it is linked in the show notes, and it's titled, "I Loved Bike Touring Until I Got Paid to Do It." And as you'll hear in the interview, as soon as I saw that and read it, I said, I have to have her on the show. We don't really get into the stories of it that much, so I encourage you to read the article itself. It's so entertaining. She's an incredible writer, and I wanted to kind of shed some light on the other side. If you are going to pursue something outdoorsy or something adventure related, there's a lot of realities you're going to have to face. And for me, it got me to the point, here and there where I just hated it. I hated my job. I hated what I was doing. It made me hate, backpacking or whatever it was, or bike packing, because I had to, thinking about it for work is a totally different mindset than just doing it for enjoyment, which is how most of us start out doing what we love in the outdoors or with the adventure world. So Caitlin's reflection is really good. I obviously would never encourage anyone from pursuing their passion. Absolutely. But, you need to know there are things that go into that are real issues. And a lot of times you don't get paid that much. So every once in a while I do talk to someone who has an incredible setup and just a dream job, and they figured it out. But anyway, enough of me talking. I know you hear that a lot, but let's get into it. And I hope you enjoy today's episode, and stay safe out there. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we're talking to Caitlin Giddings, and I came across her because I saw an article on Outside Online that said I loved bike touring until I got paid to do it, and that obviously struck me because listeners know I have a bike touring, bike packing background. So I immediately read the article and said I got to have Caitlin on the show because this just sounds incredible. So Caitlin, welcome to the show.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. A lot of us have something we love, but then we get paid to do it and it just changes the relationship of it. But I don't want to start right there. Let's actually go back a little bit and just kind of hear, where are you from? And, what was your early adventure experiences and what kind of led you to bike touring in general?
Yeah. So I grew up in Kansas and I was not an outdoorsy person. I was a very indoor kid. Growing up, I was really into comic books and playing Dungeons and Dragons and all of that. And yeah. And then I just got really into riding my bike everywhere because when I went to college, I didn't have a car. So I moved to Portland, Oregon, like a lot of people after college. And I started as a bike messenger there. So I have spent a lot of my life trying to turn what I love into a job of some sort.
Did you enjoy that? Just bike message, because it's, deadlines and fighting traffic constantly. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah. I mean, I loved it. I think it gets portrayed commonly as a very exciting job, whereas like a lot of it's just kind of sitting around drinking coffee and doing the crossword puzzle.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have thought that at all.
I mean, there are very busy days where you really don't get to sit down and it's pretty crazy. And it's definitely I would say it's dangerous. So there's excitement there, but there's also just a lot of, very chill times that you don't really hear about from people who are bike messengers very often.
No one's tweeting about that.
Yeah. But I loved it. It was pretty much all I wanted to do. And I definitely did it too long. I feel like I did it past where it reached any point of excitement. And not that I would say that anyone who wants to be a lifer is doing it too long, but I'm just meaning for my own self. I was ready to move on.
And how did you move on? Did you get into touring at that point? I know you eventually did do your own long distance tour, correct?
Yeah, I started touring. I didn't know a lot about touring. I knew that somebody I was friends with had done it, but a friend of mine wanted to go on a bike tour. So we kind of planned it for half a year. And while I was a bike messenger, I was kind of planning to take a couple months off to ride from Portland, Oregon to Kansas City, Missouri, where my family was. And I was just kind of like, I bought the maps from Adventure Cycling and kind of planned out a route off of their Trans-America Trail. And so we were going to go together and I kind of counted on him to assemble a lot of this camping stuff. I'm not a big, overly prepared person. That's kind of like...
you're preaching to the choir. Okay.
Yeah. Like I had no idea. I mean, I was a bike messenger, but like I'm not a very mechanical person. I had no idea about like good touring gearing or, somebody told me to get just a bike rack and some Ortlieb panniers. And so I did. And then my friend had a sleeping bag for me and a tent. Cause I also like not having grown up a very outdoorsy person, I really hadn't done a lot of camping. And so that was pretty much our plan, just to ride. He was living in Kansas and he was going to fly out and then we were going to ride back together. And unfortunately he got sick the first day and decided to stop.
On the first day? Jeez.
Yeah, so I don't want to throw him under the bus. He did get very sick.
Yeah, I mean, you can't help it, but like coincidence, it's like, holy cow, that's unfortunate.
Right. But my idea, I was like, okay, we're not that far away. We can ride back or we can, stay in a hotel and wait this out. But I think he realized like how in over our heads we were, that we weren't really prepared for this. And so he just decided that he was not going to do the tour. And so I was kind of at a crossroads and I just decided to keep riding alone. which at the time my parents were really angry. Like I was an adult, so I kind of don't know why they thought they had a say. But I mean, this was a while ago, so I didn't have a cell phone. And so I called them from payphones and they would not accept the call.
No way. So they were really mad.
Yeah, I think they were just like, you're going to get killed out there. Like, we don't understand what you're doing. You're on a bicycle. Like, I think they were just picturing me like on a bicycle by the side of the interstate. And then just, camping and by the side of the road, which was often what I was doing. But
So they were right.
Yeah. I think it probably sounds more dangerous if you're not there doing it. But I had such, I felt like it was such an epic adventure for me. And I just like developed so much self-confidence from doing that alone. And I don't know, I guess I felt like I was like finally on the D&D adventure that I had always been preparing for.
That's awesome. I mean, that does take a lot of guts. I mean, I remember my first solo was after a long experience with a friend, and just like you, people quit early on in the trip, and I was honestly very scared about and it was not a wild terrain or out in the middle of nowhere. I was like, oh my God, I'm out here alone with all these people. And so I definitely commend you. I know exactly what that feels like.
Yeah, I think I just didn't know how much I didn't know. Like, so being from Kansas, I didn't realize, I knew it was summer. So I was like, okay, it's going to be warm. And I had no idea. This sounds so stupid now, but like, I didn't know it gets colder at higher elevation.
Well, I mean, you're in Kansas. How are you supposed to know?
Yeah. So like the second night or so, or like, no, it was probably like 4 or 5 nights into it. I was in the Cascades, I guess it would be. Yeah, in Oregon. And I was camping up there and I just like was ill prepared for the cold. Like I had a really thin sleeping bag, like the kind you might have on like a high school slumber party or something. And yeah, I just ended up having to get into the sleeping bag, put on every like article of clothes I brought. And then I actually got inside one of my panniers. And then I just pulled the tent down over me because I was so cold and I just was shaking all night. And then 2 weeks into the trip, I reached Missoula and I rode straight to the REI and just put a new sleeping bag on my credit card.
Man, I can't tell you how much I can relate to this. Did the same thing with a down jacket one time. Just like, I don't care how much it costs. I'm buying it the moment I get into town. I froze my butt off last night. And so going through and getting that far, I mean, you said you developed a self-confidence, and, by the end of that experience, I mean, were you just like this, I can do anything type attitude? I'm a new person.
I actually felt that way. I mean, in some ways I was like, I'm living for the first time. And I was like, I wrote about it a little bit in that outside piece, but like I was super shy before the trip. I mean, I was always super shy growing up, but being alone forced me to talk to so many strangers. And I met people who were riding their bikes the same direction I was, or in opposite directions, and just like spent a lot of time with other bike tourists, which was really great. And I felt like I developed this self-confidence in being able to like talk to people that weren't like me, or like people that I'd never met before, and just start conversations. So yeah, I would recommend doing something stupid like that. I mean, not that bike touring is stupid, but maybe just jumping into it without being prepared is a little stupid.
It can be, but
yeah,
I feel like bike touring's a great thing to be stupid at versus maybe mountaineering, where you could die on the top of a Denali or something. But this is, I don't know, there's something special about bike touring to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, road touring, relatively safe. It's not like you're throwing yourself out into the wilderness.
So you get through it, and, obviously I'm sure tons of people are asking you, stuff, seeing you alone, and, like, where are you going? What you doing? So that, all that together forced you to get out of your shell, gave you all this confidence, basically showed you I can ride a bike pretty much around the world if I wanted to. And you go back to Portland, correct? After that, and then what? What was life like, and what started going through your head then?
Yeah, so I went back to Portland after that, and I felt like I was just a new person, like so much had changed. And then I just kind of like went right back to my old life. Yeah, that was really hard. Like all I wanted to do was bike tour. And so it was bike touring was pretty much like all I thought about going into like a Portland winter where it's just really like dreary and rainy. So yeah, that was when I was like, how can I do this again? I didn't have a lot of money at the time. And one of the things that had actually helped me on my tour was that I had gotten hit by a car and before the tour, like a few months before the tour. And so I had gotten just a small amount of money for that. Like I had some injuries, but luckily I didn't have like major injuries that set the tour back. But I had gotten like a small amount of money for pain and suffering from that because they had hit me actually head on driving on the wrong side of the road in the bike lane. So I just flipped over their car.
Oh my gosh. And that was bike messaging, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay. Holy cow. No wonder your parents were scared.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were terrified the entire period of time that I was a bike messenger. But yeah, so I came back and then I had used all that money for touring and I really wanted to tour again. But, you know, being a bike messenger is not like a career in which you make bank. So so I was kind of like, maybe I can get a job with a touring operation. So that kind of became my goal, is to find a way to get back on the road without, or like basically, and not that I thought I would make a lot of money leading bike tours, but I was basically like, okay, I just want to be able to like afford my own ability to tour, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's common. You know, we all have an experience where, you know, it's so life changing and we're so in love with it. And, you know, through hikers, I talk to them a lot on this show and there's a lot of them, bike tours for sure. And especially when you're on the younger side, you have this desire to say, you know, how can I make a living at this now? And how can I, in a way, build a career out of it? And you start figuring it out, kind of like when your first tour, you just kind of throw yourself out there trying to figure it out. You kind of do it with your career too. Like, how can I just make this happen? And I remember myself exploring all sorts of avenues and jumping pretty heavy into opportunities like this. And so I assume you did find a job eventually, and I mean, how did that feel? I mean, was it just like, oh, this, it's just going to be a steady continuation of the life that I've been dreaming of?
Yeah, and I don't think I really even knew there was an outdoor industry. Like, I don't think I really understood like what kind of jobs are out there in the outdoors world. I just wanted to ride my bike a lot, and I was kind of tired of like sticking in the grid of downtown Portland. So yeah, so I basically found a job leading tours.
I mean, what was the first tour? What did y'all do, and what was that like for you?
Yeah, so I went to a leadership training to do tours, and I kind of wrote about this in the article. But at the time, I felt like bike touring was largely, I feel like it's changed a lot now, which is so awesome. Like when I see all of the adventure rides happening, there are so many more women and queer people involved in bike touring and younger people. But when I was bike touring, mostly all I was seeing was, you know, middle-aged men or older white men, I guess. And which is great, but you know, a lot of people were, when I was doing my own tour, just expressing fear to me that something would happen to me, that it was unsafe to be doing a tour like that alone, or to be like a young woman out camping alone. Or so when I went to do leadership training, it was definitely, you know, it was primarily like older guys.
Probably retired and who had time to do this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's
no,
mostly
I can totally see
who's
that.
involved in that world is retirees, which is great. I mean, it actually was really inspiring to me as a young person, because I was seeing all these people who were in their 60s and 70s who were having all these amazing adventures and just who had led these like incredible lives where they had ridden all these places. So that part of it was really cool, but I actually feel like I kind of stood out a little bit in that world. And I think that helped me when I got a job on a big bike tour, because they were like, yeah, we want a woman leader as part of this big bike tour. So
let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, Roman. One of the things I hate the most about doctor's appointments is that I will schedule one and it's literally probably a month later before I can go. And then it's a lot of time before I get results. And honestly, being a guy, I don't go to the doctor all that often. I think, oh my gosh, I think it's been years, literally years since I've been to the dentist or the doctor. And I definitely have some issues I need to seek treatment on. I don't know. I did procrastinate in that department. And if you're dealing with something like erectile dysfunction, that procrastination is not going to pay off in the long run. Let's just put it that way. Good news is Roman has been spending years trying to solve this by building a digital platform that connects you with a doctor who's licensed in your state, all from the comfort of your home. So they make it convenient to get a treatment you need and on your schedule. So just grab your phone, and really all you have to do is use your phone or computer, and you complete a free online visit, and you'll hear back from a U.S. licensed physician within 24 hours. And if doctor decides that treatment is right for you, Roman's Pharmacy can ship your medication to you free in just 2 days. So you don't even need to leave your house. On one hand is great because I love to work. I'm a workaholic, so I want to work. I don't want to take time out of my day to go to the doctor, take care of myself. I kind of just want it shipped to me. We're in this Amazon culture, and it's awesome to get stuff sent to us. And Roman has figured that out when it comes to dealing with erectile dysfunction. And obviously there's no commitments. You can cancel anytime. So if you're struggling with ED, go to getroman.com/ASP for a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's getroman.com/ASP for a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. And that is also in the show notes. All right, thank you. And let's get back to the episode. Wow. And so what was the experience like for you, considering all that, and then also having to not just watch out for yourself on these tours, but a bunch of other people?
It was hard. I mean, it's a lot of work. Yeah, because basically, you're not out there to really ride your bike. You're out there to take care of the people who are taking the trips, which I absolutely knew going into it. But it's, you basically don't have a day off, and you're working around the clock since you're just camping with people. So that was challenging, because I think a lot of people are really great and they understand like that you're a human being and that you need kind of some downtime. But, I think sometimes people's expectations, if they are paying to do a bike tour, or I'm sure it's the same for like river rafting or that kind of thing, they just have really high expectations of staff or whoever they're, paying to help them out with their adventuring.
Wow. So and it's not like, rafting where you're there for half a day or a full day. You're there, on some pretty long tours with people. So I heard you mention, or I read that you mentioned, I don't know how much of the article you can talk about, but there were just some absolutely amazing stories in that thing. And one of the things you mentioned was that it was a lot less of like team building. It was more so like reality TV, like Survivor, like pitting people against each other in these really extreme environments. And it was just kind of a drama fest at times. Did you see that more times than not?
Yeah. So I absolutely thought of it. The first tour I did was 40 people, and there was one main leader and then 3 staff, and I was one of the staff. Things went wrong really early in the trip. Like, so somebody was hit by a car, like, yeah, on a long, flat, safe stretch where there was a shoulder, and they were killed. And so it was truly awful. And everybody on the trip, was understandably traumatized after that, because it is, when you're bike touring, you are out on the highway and some of the roads are busier than other roads. This happened to be a pretty quiet road, but I think it made everyone feel way more vulnerable throughout the rest of the trip. So, which is understandable. And people were also like, we were just meeting that guy and now he's gone. I mean, it was just very shocking.
On so many levels, that's very traumatizing. Holy cow.
Yeah, it was very tragic, and it was, yeah, it was absolutely traumatizing to all of the riders, which we absolutely understood. And then it was just a challenge of making the rest of the trip work after that, because, you know, people were upset, but they also had spent a year dreaming of riding their bikes across the country and were ready to do that. So it was kind of like the trip still needed to continue. And so it was just a question of like meeting people's expectations for the trip, which were heightened after that. Just people felt unsafe all the time. And people, you know, some of the people on the trip felt dissatisfied with the trip to the extent that, you know, they kind of took it out on the staff, which we were new there and, you know, kind of just getting our bearings of what we were doing as a staff. So it was just difficult meeting everybody's expectations. It became like an around the clock job, just trying to keep up with everybody, what everybody needed, and keep everybody from mutinizing, basically.
Oh, gosh. Did it ever become, you know, too much? I mean, I know eventually it did. You moved on, but like during the trip itself, how did you handle all that personally, internally? What was going through your mind and emotions through something like that?
I mean, I felt awful. So that first trip I did was we were driving vehicles. And later trips I did, it was just me as a leader riding with the group, with no support vehicles. But that was one that involved support vehicles. And I did feel some element of guilt, even though I wasn't there at the site when that happened. And so, yeah, I definitely, like, my personality is kind of, I don't like to feel like people are mad at me. So I definitely did everything I could to, you know, try to make people feel happy on the trip. But I think for some people there was not going to be any making them happy. Yeah, so the trip was really difficult.
And that was your first one, right?
Yeah, that was my first one.
Gosh.
And I was like, this was horrible and really hard for a lot of reasons. But I was like, but I think if I did, you know, like a more traditional trip where we were all riding, things would be better. So I just kept going back and trying to lead more trips. And yeah, so I definitely had better experiences later until the last trip, which I wrote about. But yeah, it was just a challenge. I did think of people as, I did definitely thought of people as a reality show, because there were just so many characters that emerged every time. And, you know, I think a lot of it is the fact that you're riding your bike all day and then you're sleeping on the ground and you're dealing with all these people. I mean, I'm just trying to put myself in the minds of the people on the trip. You know, you're spending every day with people you've never met before. So, it is like the perfect sort of recipe for conflicting personalities to kind of blow up.
Jeez. Yeah, no kidding. Especially something that long, you know. So a lot of people can put on a happy face for a few days and maybe even a week, but when it starts getting into multiple months or a month, I mean, and not only that, but probably doing the hardest thing they've ever done, volunteering to do the hardest thing they've ever done. Yeah, that's a recipe for, and it's not like a reality show where there's prize money to try to win at the end. It's like, you can just kind of let everything out. There's not a whole lot to lose at that point, it seems like. And you're the one probably getting the brunt of all that, being a guide and a leader. And so you having to ride those miles, it's not just the fact that you also have to ride, or if you're support van, but sounds like you were riding a lot of the time too. You're having to fight all these fires all day. And I'm sure that is just, I'm sure you're exhausted at the end of one of these.
Yeah, that's definitely the job, you know, to like ride your bike all day. And then when you get to the campsite is sort of like to deal with all the problems there, which is like can be anything from like the campsite didn't have the reservation, or, you know, people are fighting over the best camp spot, or people don't want to, like, we had a cooking rotation set up, and, you know, that created conflicts. And I think people just got like tired and worn out and sick of each other over the course of months. And I mean, in other ways, like, people form these families. I mean, I'm still in contact with a lot of the people who have done the tours, but, you know, it's whenever there's like conflicting personalities, and a lot of the people who do the tours are retirees, and a lot, you know, there's just a lot of, I think, like alpha personalities that sort of emerge.
That is so fascinating. I've guided some, but only for, you know, at about a week at a time. So nothing this long or even really this hard. And so, you know, for you, getting into it for a little bit, what was your general feeling about doing what you love for a living? Was it something, you know, was it totally different than what you imagined, or kind of what you were preparing for, what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone wants to sort of merge what they love with their job, you just have to be prepared for, you know, you won't get paid as well. Um, and it's just going to be really difficult because obviously everyone kind of wants to make that happen for themselves. So you're up against a lot. And I still want to believe there are kind of like ideal jobs in the outdoor industry, because you know, I'm still like writing for outdoor publications. So I, I'm still trying to make it work in some ways. But yeah, you have to recognize that it's going to be immensely challenging, just in ways you never expected.
What were some of the ways you didn't expect, or some of the more mundane challenges?
For me, bike touring, I feel like when I look back on it, and at the time, what I struggled with the most was the fact that I was a young woman trying to have sort of maintain a sense of leadership over like largely men who are a lot older than me. And I just didn't have a lot of leadership experience either. I was just coming from like a different world. I feel like I didn't have a lot of experience in the professional world or any of the worlds. A lot of the men that were on the tour were like ex-military. And so I don't think I was very good at like projecting the kind of leadership they were used to, maybe. And so I guess that was probably one of the things I struggled with. I struggled a lot with just feeling like there was just a lot of, I think the bike industry and the bike world, there's definitely a lot of sexism there. And I wanted to be, you know, I've always wanted to work in that world. And the challenge I think I faced the most that I just didn't see coming maybe is just that, like, I was always afraid that if I complained or showed that it bothered me, that people would say, oh, well, if you don't like it, you don't belong here, or you can leave. But I wanted to be, you know, in the bike industry or the bike world so bad. So I think I just like bottled up a lot of my frustration and pretended like nothing bothered me. And that was probably like the biggest challenge in some of the tours that I led. Was just dealing with a lot of like sexual harassment and sexism and homophobia, which I don't know. I just felt like dealing with all that on top of just doing the job was just something I just didn't predict going into it.
Not only are you having to do the practical things, cooking and cleaning and literally riding, it's balancing all these societal pressures and just, yeah, like you said, sexism and homophobia and all sorts of personalities that are all on edge. I mean, it sounds like it's, like you said, a recipe for just chaos, but you also say there's, you know, incredibly beautiful experiences through it as well. And I do feel like, you know, I probably am wanting to focus on the negative too much, and so I apologize. What were some of the joys that it brought you, and what were some of the experience with people that you maybe saw them doing something they thought they could never do, kind of like you had done? I mean, what was it like for you on the good side?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely experiencing the country, like experiencing, as you know, from bike touring, You see so many little parts of the country that you would never see from your car, just little towns, and just so much more of the natural scenery that you might not pick up from the highway, because interstates don't tend to go through like the best parts of the US. But I felt like touring gave me this. I had not felt, I don't think I had felt in touch with being patriotic before I started touring. And then once I was, and I just saw these like incredible parts of the US, just the natural beauty, I would just be on my bike, like kind of silently weeping because because it just like stunned me how much beauty there was, especially going down a descent. So that part of it was really magical, and I feel like I shared that with the people on the tours, so I would connect with them really close, like we were a family, because we were seeing all these things. We're like, no one sees this stuff, you know, like who else can we talk to about this stuff? Like when we get home, our spouses aren't going to know all these like little places we've been. So yeah, you do, like when you're touring, you do connect with all these little places, and you stop and you talk to people in little towns and kind of like learn their stories, because people want to know. When they see your bike, they're like, where are you coming from? Where are you going? Like, how far are you gone today? But then I also feel like they want to tell you about themselves and kind of tell you about the town. So that, honestly, I feel like that's what led me to going on to becoming a writer, is just, I don't know. I felt like I was starting to ask the people that I met more questions about them than I was really like, because, you know, you get kind of tired of telling people where you came from, where you're going. And after a while, you're kind of like, well, you know, wanting to hear their story, and just, you know, there's so many just interesting people along the road. So those were the things that really stand out when I look back on it. Just all the amazing little tiny places in the US I would have no idea existed. Like, I feel like I just look at the US, or, you know, when I'm on a highway, I'm like looking at the shoulder to see if I think it would be a good shoulder to ride on, even when I'm in a car.
Oh my gosh. You could ask my wife. I'm like always commenting, wow, what a shoulder. That is a nice shoulder right there. Look at that. Look how smooth that is. There's no like,
exactly.
you know, the rumbled strips. There's none of that. It's beautiful. Look at this road. And I'm always saying that. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
and it's so funny you say patriotic too. I was in college when I did my first one, and I was going through a lot of, you know, existential, you know, different just philosophies and counterculture, or whatever you want to call it. And I remember doing my first tour, and I was just like the most, I just was, I'd never considered myself terribly patriotic before then, but now I love this place. I love, obviously, the world, and, you know, but I'm like, wow, this is amazing that we have these gorgeous scenery and these landscapes. And yeah, patriotic, I would say. It made me more patriotic the more I rode and saw these small towns and heard these people's stories, like real people. And I mean, there's so many things you're saying that I'm just like, I want to go on a tour now.
Yeah.
Because it's so true. And I think it's just an incredible way to travel. So I absolutely understand falling in love with it to the point that you want to make it what you do for a living. But when it's confined into the only way to make money with something like that is usually to take other people, and then you introduce all these really complex things, and, you know, conflicting personalities, like you said, and just all that. And so for you, you know, I'm sure that took a toll on your love for it when you were touring, and, you know, eventually you got out of it. What was that process like, and why did you decide to do that? Did a better opportunity come along, or did you get sick of it, or what was that for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I never expected to really make a lot of money, but even when I was doing my own tour and I felt like I was camping for free in a lot of places, like you're just eating so much and you still have, you know, expenses back home. So yeah, it's just the money of not being at work is really what it is, that you need. So that's kind of why, yeah, that I wanted to make it a job, is just to not be like missing out on, yeah, to just kind of offset my expenses, I guess. And I think I would have done it, and I was still working as a messenger throughout the non-summer months, or when I couldn't be on tour or lead a tour. On the last tour, I had a really bad experience with someone who I think was just going through a really rough time in their life and unfortunately took it out on the group and then on me when I tried to ask him to lead the tour. And so after that, I was really like, this just isn't worth it. Like, it's as fun as riding a bike is and as great as it is to ride with all these other people in the group. Like, this is too hard. Like, this is too much work. And I think this would be better off if I just found another job and then, made time to go on tours of my own, and didn't try to combine these two things. So I wanted to go back to school anyway. And I went back for journalism because I love the dying industry, apparently. I was like bike messengering to journalism. Like I said, I was like writing zines about my adventures on the road, which kind of showed me that I liked writing. So that's pretty much all I wanted to do then. And so I just went back to school for that and then got a job at Runner's World in bicycling. So
let's take a quick message break and hear from our sponsor, CS Instant Coffee. With spring being right around the corner, I know that a lot of y'all are getting ready to plan some big adventures. One of the things you don't want to have to carry with you into the backcountry or on road trips or whatever you're doing is a bunch of coffee equipment. But if you're like me, you really can't go a day without coffee. That might be a problem, but I don't care. I love it. So that being said, I take CS Instant Coffee with me just because, it's super convenient. One of their packs can fill a 20-ounce container full of really good instant coffee, and I don't have to lug around a French press or an AeroPress in the backcountry, and it's just a few little packets with some stream water that's boiled. And so it's really convenient. It's so good that I actually drink it at home a lot of the times out of convenience. They've been long supporters of the show, so I would really love for you to go check them out at csinstant.coffee. Use the code ADVENTURE at checkout, and that'll get you 10% off. Really appreciate it. Thanks, y'all, for supporting the show for so long. Now back to the episode. Once you got another job, like a more standard job, was there like this, I don't know, this relief or this pressure taken off? Like, oh, and now I can go and enjoy what I love doing for just doing it rather than to try to make a living at it.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, but I also I went from school to Runner's World where I had these opportunities to run all these marathons with Runner's World. And so I could not turn any of them down. And I did 6 or 7 in 1 year and really burnt myself out. So I think I'm still battling that, how you find the fact that maybe your leisure pursuits are better kept as hobbies, because I'm still trying to combine work. I'm going to try to do a bike tour with my toddler in June across Missouri. I'm going to write about it. So I'm still combining work and bike touring in some ways. Yeah, I'm still trying to find a way.
Well, holy cow, that's exciting because you said your toddler is around 2 years old.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I've been, our 10-month-old, I'm super excited to eventually take him on a tour, and very young, and I cannot wait to hear how that goes and learn as much as I can from you, because that's something that I would definitely love to do as well.
Yeah, I figure it'll either be really awesome or it'll be a complete show, and then it'll make a good story.
Either way, it's going to be productive. Either way,
yeah.
If a good story is probably worth it to you at this point.
I know, that's the sad thing, is when something goes wrong on some sort of bike packing trip or race, running race, then I'm kind of okay, how can I spin this?
We say in our house, I said, if it's going to make a good story, it's worth going through. And
yeah, exactly.
I have really bitten my tongue on that a few times where I'm like, this is not fun. I don't care how good the story is. After this, I want this hard time to be over.
Right.
But every time I look back, I'm like, nah, it's a really good story. I'm glad it happened.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same camp. When it's happening, you're like, why can't one thing be easy? And then later you're like, okay.
I was being dramatic.
Yeah.
Well, so you're, farther along down the road, still figuring it out, learned a lot along the way. For folks out there who are maybe younger or maybe older and have the opportunity now to do something they've always wanted to do, any advice that you've learned for folks that want to essentially chase a passion for either, at least a partial living?
Oh,
I know it's a big question.
yeah. I mean, I think maybe just recognize that there are downsides to it. I feel I'm probably hitting the upsides too much in this conversation, but that there's, I think some of the jobs that seem like dream jobs in the outdoor industry, and I still want to think that there are dream jobs out there, but I think it's every part of it has its like pros and cons, So if you're getting paid to ride your bike or run or have an adventure in any way, there's going to be downsides to it. Like you're giving up something. You're giving up some of that joy and freedom. And so I guess recognize that going in and know that you might just be happier just working a job that has nothing to do with your passions, but making plenty of time for your passions on the weekends or, outside of work.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think for each and every one of us, it just takes figuring it out. And so if you got to jump head first like you did and realize early on it didn't work for you or not in that way, and I'm similar. I jumped head first and it just was terrible, hated it, and learned to dial it back and kind of balance it a little bit more. But that took time and that took experience. And so, yeah, I totally agree. I would never discourage someone from trying something they love to do, but if you can at least know that if it doesn't go to plan, it's okay. You don't not love the thing enough to make it. You know what I mean? Right. I felt guilty that I wasn't making it work sometimes because like, apparently I'm not passionate enough, but that's just not the case at all. Sometimes it's just as hard to make a living at certain things. So
yeah. And I mean, there are people in the outdoor industry that I know that are I feel like some of their passion for it is a little dampened by the fact that it's part of their job. So yeah, if you want to maintain that passion, if you want to make it your job, that's great. And, it's always great to be passionate about something in your workplace. But yeah, if you can't make that happen, it's also, then you have kind of an unhampered passion. And I don't know. That wasn't very articulate. Sorry.
You have to write it down first.
Yeah. I know. That's what I'm like. I have to let you know this is why I'm a writer and not
that's funny.
Not a speaker.
Yeah. I'm the complete opposite. I cannot sit down and write, but I love talking.
Oh yeah. That's great.
Listening. And so audio is definitely my mode, if you will, my medium, but no, I'd love to, for you to share. I really appreciate your time, but where can people find out more about you and your story and your work?
I at CaitlinGiddings.com or I'm at Caitlin Giddings on Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, say hi.
Cool. Well, I will put all that in the show notes, and yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and telling a little bit about your story, and just, I absolutely loved the article. I'm going to link it so that people can get a little more detail on some of those stories. And so I'm glad we didn't really get into it because it'll draw them into the article, because it's very well written, very entertaining, definitely worth a read, and just amazing stories, honestly, just pretty wild stuff you went through. So thank you again for coming on and telling kind of an audio version of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really great to talk to you. And I was trying really hard to resist my reporter's instinct to turn all the questions around on you.
I appreciate it.
But I was like, you probably want to get back to your kid at some point.
Yeah, you probably do too. He's asleep now, I think. Okay. So I'm good. I'm home free for the rest of the night. So.
Oh, nice.
All right. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much. I'll let you know when it comes out. And look forward to maybe talking again one day or reading your work moving forward. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Have a good night.
All right. You too. All right. Bye.
First of all,
thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/Adventure Sports Podcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.